Welcome to the Habit Chess podcast, where we talk about high agency thinking and skill acquisition. My name is Ms. Bahawk, and in 2016, I started my very first podcast out of my childhood bedroom. And within a year, that helped me land my dream job, getting to coach Fortune 1000 executives, professional athletes, and anyone who was coming back from an injury. That was really my specialty. And now I write and talk about high agency thinking on the Habit Chess podcast and in my Habit Chess newsletter, which, by the way, you can download in the description below. Now, in today's episode, I want to cover something exciting that I've been thinking about, which is if I dedicated the rest of my life to learning only a handful of skills, which ones would those be? And likely I would want to choose certain skills that could be paired with other things, it could be stacked with other skills, and it would open up a bunch of sub skills that maybe weren't available to me previously, or it would make it easier for me to acquire those sub skills. And so I've identified the 3 skills that I think quietly shape our lives. And these are the ones that makes it easier to build, easier to pivot, whether you want to switch careers without starting over, build something of your own, grow your confidence through action, attract people who think like you, or finally break free from feeling stuck. These 3 skills can be your foundation. They will help you move faster, think clearer, and make better decisions. And of course, it'll help you move through life with a lot more agency. For me, these are lifelong skills to learn or die trying. So let's start with the first one, context mapping. When you're learning something new, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed. There's a lot of fear that's involved that prevents you from even trying or from taking the kind of attempts that you will learn from, the kind of frustration, the little agitation that, makes you feel a little bit of struggle. You're venturing into the unknown. Your brain starts throwing out all these doubts. What if it doesn't work? What if it's not good? What if I get made fun of? But that fear is normal. It's how we're wired. Over the past 15 years, I've developed a way to make it more approachable when learning new skills. This is something I've done intuitively since I was a teenager, but I didn't really quite have the words for it until recently. To me, context mapping is the process of taking a skill or experience or framework from some other part of your life that you're familiar with and applying it to a completely different area. The best part is that you're truly never starting from scratch. The way I look at context mapping is how when you're uploading a spreadsheet into a piece of software, it's going to map all the different fields like the name column, the email column, the city or state or phone number. And based on that information, it's able to organize some of that data and go, okay, cool. These are the names. Is it the first name? Is it the last name? Is this the phone number? And that process of mapping different fields is how I look at the different puzzle pieces when learning a new skill. So for example, working out, that's something I spent over 15 years doing. And I also spent about a decade as a fitness coach. So I can pull from that context. What is it like when, you are learning something new and you have to put in the reps to actually get to a place of struggle? And after it starts to burn a little bit, okay, now we know that we're really building, we're working, we're breaking things down. That kind of thinking made it totally normal for me to accept the idea that, okay, I need to experience struggle when I'm learning a new skill. It's not just repetitive perfection. You're not really learning as much and absorbing as much long term by doing that. So for me to take that piece of information and recognize the pattern, like, oh, that is just like when I'm doing bicep curls and I need to do 12 reps instead of 10 because, 10 has been feeling a little bit easy now and I need to break things down and actually feel the struggle. All of a sudden, my brain can understand and wrap my head around why it makes sense to struggle. And not just intellectually, but in a way where I might actually apply that in my life. I might be okay with trying something or doing something where I feel a little bit of struggle. I do this all the time in a business context. I don't think that I would have been able to be successful with Pod Mahal in any way if I had not had the context from running a coaching business where I managed a roster of 60, 70 clients. Context mapping is what gave my business the opportunity to exist. Because of all of the experience I had managing a large roster of clients, managing them remotely from different countries, knowing how to deal with retention, compliance, all of these little tiny things that you pick up in one area. Well, guess what? When it came to starting my business, okay, I had a sales process that I could actually envision myself going through. I knew I had a model for, what success looked like, right? And so I could pull from that context the patterns that were useful and apply it to something that seemingly had so much chaos and so much newness to it. So it allows your brain to, instead of fearing all of the things that you don't know, you begin to kind of pull from the things you do know and use it to understand all of these new concepts. I also pull a lot from stand-up comedy because I did stand up for 4 years. And so to me, it's something where I have the experiences of being on stage, of bombing, of refining a joke 10 different times through 10 different sets or 10 different nights and getting to that, final form where it actually works. What's it like when a joke that always works doesn't? What do you do? All of these things that you pick up in that area, to me now, even though I haven't stepped on stage in years, I apply those in little things that I'm doing. So something that I admire in the world of comedy is when you are building an hour. It might take you 3 years, 10 years to build that first hour. Rejection is something that is easier to handle for me because of all of my experiences, I think, in stand-up comedy. That is something that you can pull from a context. It's not just exactly, oh, how do I do this? But it's certain traits or skills that you've developed from the other things that's like, oh, okay, well, if I have, told a joke and nobody laughed out of dozens of people in a room, or hundreds of people, actually, I've bombed from hundreds of people too. So hundreds of people in a room, then, okay, sending this cold email to see if this person wants to work with me isn't a big deal. And I can hear a lot of no's and bad things without it really affecting me as hard as it used to, right? I feel a little more weathered in that sense. And so pick some of the areas for yourself that you feel really, really like, oh, I'm obsessed with this stuff. I know every facet of it. I've been doing it a long time. It will help you understand anything new that just feels so unfamiliar. It will make it more approachable. The reason I think context mapping is so huge is because it arms you with the skill of pattern recognition and all of these other sub skills that are pretty important for just navigating your way through life, where someone is not telling you exactly what to do. The things that are the quiet parts that people don't say out loud, how do we figure out those things? That is because of patterns, right? We're saying, okay, people don't say this or they do say that. People like you or smile when you say this. They laugh when you say this. There's all these tiny cues that we're picking up from our environment. So context mapping helps you get better at recognizing patterns and spotting certain cues, which leads me to number 2. Skill acquisition. This is the idea of learning how to learn. And to me, this is the skill that, if you master it, you become an absolute nightmare to replace, because someone who can pick something up that they haven't done before, do it with a good attitude, not complain about it, and, go through all the awkward phases and the frustrations and actually pick something up relatively quickly is going to be invaluable, right? It's the one certainty that we have over the next couple decades is that no matter what technologies come out or how much better they get, we will have to learn new things and we're going to need to do them faster. And it's something that is going to be quickly normalized in the marketplace, right? As technology advances, like your ability to be able to use new things and pick up new things will either limit or expand your potential. In context mapping, we talked about how you get good at recognizing patterns and spotting certain cues. Now, in skill acquisition mode, there is a cycle that we used to use for motor learning and development in my fitness coaching days. And it was the idea that when you're learning a new movement, you are basically, this is the clunky phase, right? Where your body's not doing what you want it to. It's not reacting at the right time. You're having to really think, like when I'm swinging a tennis racket, okay, I'm having to think of, the 10 different things, where my body's going, where my hand is, where my elbow is. There's extra thought and labor going into each of these pieces. So that's the cognitive stage where you're actually having to think about it. Then you get to the associative stage, which is now you're beginning to associate the different cues and patterns that actually come with that movement. Oh, okay, when a ball, like a tennis ball on a tennis court, when it starts to trend over towards the right side, my brain knows, okay, begin to shuffle over to the right, right? Versus in the beginning, that reaction time might be super, super slow. It might be like I'm still standing here and, I always miss because of that. In tiny ways, you're beginning to associate these cues and patterns, and they're strengthening where you don't have to think about them as much, which of course opens up room for more learning. And it leads us to the third stage of building a skill, which is the autonomous stage. And this is where you are in pure flow, right? You don't have to think too hard about the things that you really had to do before. It's almost becoming maybe hard for you to explain it to a beginner on how to do it, right? It's just you've been doing it so long, it's like tying your shoe. You don't have to think about it that much anymore. You can do it under pressure. You can do it in combination with other things. And this is the stage where, you really begin to go onto this path of mastery. As you are able to do things more autonomously, it opens up a room and space in your brain to be able to deepen your skills in other areas. Part of this is really shedding, the patterns and beliefs that we had around learning, which is, hey, I got to spend 4 years to do it, or I got to spend 10,000 hours to do it. I need to get certified in order to, be knowledgeable enough. That's not the kind of learning that I'm talking about. It's the kind of ability, if you can watch a YouTube video on how to fix something in your car and you can go ahead and do that, or you can do that in your house, being able to take something you have no idea how to do, expose yourself to those awkward stages and see it through to the other side, because now that's in your toolbox forever. Now you can combine this skill with context mapping, and you have another skill that you can now map onto the new challenges that you take on. Now let's talk about skill number 3, which is storytelling. This is the most human skill there is. And I'm not just talking about storytelling in a viral sense. Storytelling is something that I've been studying ever since I was a teenager. It's something I was so bad at that, like, when I would be in a circle of people and, I would actually say something in the conversation, like, I remember the awkwardness that would go through my body when I knew, like, whoa, I structured this the wrong way. Like, the way I said this, like, was not as exciting as I was thinking. And I remember that frustration was just something I wanted to solve over the years. And so I've read most books on storytelling. And what you realize when you look into a lot of this stuff is, hey, there's a lot out there for storytelling in regards to fiction writing. There's a lot out there for storytelling in these other contexts. But the way I'm thinking about this is holistically, right? So there are a couple different forms of storytelling I want you to keep in mind in regards to this skill. Number one is the tangible skill of being able to communicate a story, being able to structure it, being able to write it, being able to speak it, being able to perform it. So there's that presentation aspect. But the next form of storytelling is the ones without words. So the stories, just like in movies, there's not always dialogue that's happening. There might be a certain flash, in the eyes of a character, or a certain thing in the room that they're looking at. And it happens in an 8-second, very quiet moment, but it's a transformative scene that tells you everything you need to know. It's the same as if somebody cuts you off in a crazy, ridiculous way in traffic on the road. Okay, that tells a story about that person, something that you like to eat, like to wear, who you admire, who you hate. All of these things tell these stories, these tiny little stories about us, right? And then those tiny stories add up to a bigger narrative. And so storytelling is not just about the ones that we are telling and sharing explicitly. They're being formed at all times and in all moments. And it leads me to the third form of storytelling, which are the stories that we tell ourselves. This is really important because the stories that we tell ourselves either help or hurt us en route to where we want to go. And a lot of these are just invisible, things that we haven't thought about for a long time, but things that we do believe about ourselves, that we tell ourselves. There are internal dialogue. There are things that we've come to believe and accept over the years. And a good description of this that I heard a long time ago was, if you look at a really big circle and at the start of your life, there's no stories in there. There's nothing here. It's just a blank circle. But then every little tiny experience that you have from that moment onward to now is one tiny dot that's being put in that circle. And when you think about it like that, each dot is a story that's formed, right? About yourself, about others, about the world, about whatever. Knowing that, hey, we've done this for years, we've done this for generations, but also knowing that, hey, I can choose to tell myself a different story. I can choose to enroll myself into another story. We know how powerful it is in getting across new information. We know how powerful it is when you watch a movie, like I heard this about grief, right? When you are going through grief and you watch a movie where someone else is going through loss or grief, you are able to connect and resonate with that in a way that's slightly different because there's a separation there. You are watching it play out to other characters, to someone else, but the story is the same, and there are things that are very healing about that. It's what makes us drawn to great TV shows and movies and music and art. So storytelling creates instant connection where logic fails. It bypasses resistance, and the best part is that when it lands, it can change someone's thinking forever. And it happens in moments, right? Because a great story is a lot of times just, zoomed in on a moment or a series of moments. And so if you can tell a good story, hey, you can teach, you can sell, you can heal, you can lead, you can move people in a way that logic can't. What's actually true has never mattered less, but what you think is true has never mattered more. So you're probably wondering why these 3 skills. And these 3 skills aren't just nice to haves for me. They're the foundation for everything else that kind of goes under it or that it gets paired with. These are the root skills for me that make everything else easier. If you want better focus, context mapping helps you clear the mental clutter. You want more confidence or more options? Well, skill acquisition gives you the wins that you earned. If you want real opportunity, well, hey, storytelling is what gets other people to see you, including the job that you might want or the promotion that you might desire. So context mapping, skill acquisition, and storytelling can help you create leverage in every area of your life, whether you're looking to build your health, your wealth, your career, your relationships, peace of mind, you name it. So I want you to think about which one of these skills, if you double down on for the next 90 days, you spent a quality 10 minutes a day developing, which one of these would have the biggest impact for where you're at in your life right now? And how can you use what you already have to pair with some of these skills? I hope this was useful. Check out some of the free tools in the description below, but I appreciate you hanging out, and I will see you on the next one.